Chapter 571. Z was shocked and angry. He originally wanted to persuade Dustless to stop and restrain Doflamingo. But he didn't expect Dustless to reach for a yard after getting an inch. Just because of a verbal disagreement, Dustless attacked. He turned his face faster than flipping a book. Caw caw caw, the powerful fist that was enough to crush a Navy warship suddenly fell on Dustless. He didn't dodge and his brain exploded in an instant. The ground was splashed with dark red blood stains. The scene was extremely bloody and violent. He was blown out of shape. That's impossible. Instead of feeling happy, Z tightened his nerves. His observation hockey spread out, guarding the surrounding environment. If Dustless could be killed so easily, he would have died hundreds of times. When he first came to Mariewa, he was defeated by Dustless. Even if Z used all his strength at that time, he was still afraid of Dustless's power. At that time, Dustless didn't break out all his strength. The humans in your world are really monsters. Physical skills can be practiced to such a terrifying level. It's obvious that you are already in your twilight years but still have such a powerful strength, incredible. Z's voice was full of praise. Then he saw that Wu Qin was still sitting in his original position and was still savoring the fragrant tea in his hand. He was sizing up Z from a bird's eye view. When he turned around, he saw that Wu Qin had disappeared into thin air. The bloodstains on the ground also disappeared. It was as if nothing had happened. Everything was back to the original problem. Not only that, Z also felt an abnormal pain in his arm. This guy, when did he do it? I was the one who defeated him, so why is this happening? Z's eyes solidified, looking at his smoking arm, his gloomy face was hard to hide. He can penetrate the defense made by my armament hockey. Has he reached such a level at such a young age? Looking up, Z saw that Z's right arm has been completely penetrated. The wound was as big as a thumb. It was obviously a scorching type attack. The wound has been burned and it's only a minor injury. Was what just happened an illusion? For the first time in his life, Z felt that his eyes were blurred and there was visual confusion. Reality and illusion are often only separated by a single thought: everything is like the moon in the water. What you see is only the reflection of the light in the water, it is only a pure illusion. Seeing Z's face full of hesitation and bewilderment, Wu Qin explained in a soft voice. Just a few casual words, but it contained the truth of the world. Z suddenly became enlightened. He looked up at Dustless, who was close at hand. Even if it only takes a few short steps to reach Dustless, the gap between them gave Z a sense of powerlessness. Even if it was only a few inches, Z was sure that as long as Wu Qin wanted to, he would never be able to touch him. This was not a gap in strength, but a huge gap in dimension. It was a gap that was difficult to cross just by relying on hard work. Why didn't you kill me? You can injure me, which means you can take my life. Z asked in a deep voice. His tone was full of puzzlement and deep doubts. Carefully looking at the small wound on his arm, Z suddenly understood that this was not a life-and-death battle but more like a fight between children. Dustless casually smiled and didn't want to be serious. Casually playing around is fine. There is no need to fight to the death. Z was shocked that he was like a powerless clown. He couldn't make waves. He could only be controlled by Dustless. He was even sure that if he wanted to, he would have been killed on the spot by Dustless. Your life will naturally be taken by someone else, that's all. Staring at Z with deep meaning, Dustless shook his head without leaving a trace. He can see that Z loves the Marine very much. For this, he was willing to give up his life. Today, he dared to face Dustless head-on. This shows that he is willing to give up everything. However, in the later days, such a person who loved the Marines so much without any hesitation hated the entire Marine headquarters to the bone. He wanted to get rid of it as soon as possible. The huge contrast really makes people feel that the world is fickle and the fate of many ghosts. There is no need to kill you because Doflamingo has become one of the Shichibukai. His thumb slightly hooked and the newspaper floated in front of Z. The content that caught his eyes was the laughing Doflamingo. At this moment, he has become a member of the Shichibukai organization. Z looked at Doflamingo in the newspaper. His previous worldview gradually collapsed. He didn't expect that Doflamingo, this kind of butcher, could join the Shichibukai organization. A large number of Marine rookies died in his hands. How can this garbage join the Shichibukai to show off? He killed countless Marines and didn't get the punishment he deserved. How can Z accept this? Most of the Marine interns who were killed were his students. If you want to blame someone, blame your own fate, Z. Staring at Z's pale face, Dustless had some sympathy for him. Z in front of him was like a candle in the wind, extremely fragile. The Marine who was loyal to him betrayed him. It's not hard to imagine how he would feel. I'm afraid he is completely disappointed and desperate. This kind of thing can't be accepted by anyone. This guy's heart is very broad. Wu Chen secretly said in his heart. He admired Z a little more. If someone dared to betray him, even if he chased him to the ends of the earth, Wu Chen would tear him into pieces as a warning to others. Unknowingly, Z's mentality began to quietly change. For the Marines he loved in the past, his heart's desire to protect them gradually decreased. There was even a bit of hatred in his heart. However, he still suppressed this irritable feeling of resentment. Dustless saw this and just smiled. The reason why Z betrayed the Marine is not because of other factors, but because he was forced to embark on this thorny road of no return. Chapter 572. Z almost collapsed. He didn't expect the Marine to be so unbearable. He didn't choose to resist but shamefully bowed his head. It also indirectly means that his students who died in the battle are doomed to be unable to avenge them and can only swallow their anger. Thinking about the future, Doflamingo, this kind of evil person can continue to bring disaster to the world intact. Z's forehead had a ferocious veins undulating, and his steady breathing also became coarse. Z's mind was in a trance. In the unseen world he could hear the souls of the fallen students. Their unwilling and mournful cries pierced through his ears and into his brain, driving his will. Dying in the hands of pirates can be said to be a disguised form of martyrdom. Falling in the hands of Shichibukai will only make them a laughing stock, because to some extent they can be regarded as one of us. See off the guest. After glancing at Z, Dustless closed his eyes and said casually. Dustless turned a deaf ear to Z's offensive impulse. He is a Marine Admiral-level character, and he is indeed a tragic character. Forgiving him once is not a big deal. Please. Hancock made an elegant gesture to Z, indicating that Z can leave. Z's cold eyes looked at Dustless. He seemed to be hesitating whether to leave or not, but after glancing at the Marine battleship docked in the harbor, he resolutely turned and left. This old guy is so tactful. Seeing Z simply turn around and leave, Wu Chen opened his eyes. Z gave him a simple feeling that he was the type of stubborn old man. He was the type of old man who would stick to the rules. Whiz! Suddenly there was a strong wind in front of him. Dustless was slightly surprised. He immediately raised his eyelids and saw the tall body of Z, who took the opportunity to attack. Boom boom boom, the powerful fist blasted over with full force. Just as it was about to crush Dustless, his entire person strangely disappeared. It was as if he had completely integrated into the void, disappearing without a trace in an instant. I knew you wouldn't leave so easily. Z turned to look at Dustless, whose left eye turned into Sharingan, and sneered. When facing pirates, have you ever seen a Marine Admiral who fled without fighting? Subconsciously, Z has classified Wu Chen as a type of pirate. Even compared to the pirates who commit all kinds of crimes, he knows how to use the power given by the government to be more evil. Z felt that using the word pirate to describe Wu Chen was simply an insult to the word. Marine Admiral who fled without fighting. Maybe there will be one in the history of the Marine today. A demonic whisper sounded in Z's ears, and Dustless was not in a hurry to fight his opponent. If I didn't guess wrong, when you went to Mariewa, you also brought your students who were struggling at death's door. Looking at Z's strong body, Dustless said with a smile. You bastard, don't tell me you want to. Hearing this, Z's eyes were about to split open. His eyes were burning with flames. He wasn't an idiot. What Wu Chen meant was that he was going to make a move on that group of students. A peerless master without the slightest cultivation, despicable to such a shameless degree, he would choose to attack a group of students who have no power to truss a chicken. This is the first time Z has seen it. Caw caw caw. Without thinking, Z broke the window and jumped out of the 10-meter-high window. His body fell straight to the ground and swept toward the battleship docked on the shore like a hurricane. Z was determined to protect the remaining students even if he had to risk his life. This old guy is really fickle. He just said that there is no Marine Admiral who retreats without fighting, and now he is running away. Staring at the black ink spots that have gradually disappeared in the distance, Dustless touched his forehead and seemed quite helpless. His tangled tone seemed to be a headache for Z. Young master, when did you send someone to attack his crew? Hancock elegantly stood beside Dustless, tilted her head and curiously asked. Dustless didn't contact anyone for a quarter of an hour. When did he order his men to attack Z's fleet? She was really curious. Attack? I didn't send anyone to attack. I just used Z's mentality to worry about his companions. In the final analysis, he is still a righteous person. In his eyes, the lives of the students are more important than mine, so he was so impatient. Dustless replied calmly. He was just using Z's mentality to make a sneak attack. If at this moment Z was replaced by a Kainu, he wouldn't care about this group of people. Anyway, it's just a few insignificant pawns. It's not a big deal. No one will care about it. Every day, there are countless soldiers all over the world dying in battle. Master, you are really cunning. Hancock didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She didn't expect Dustless to be so proficient in playing tricks. But will he go and come back? Her eyes fell on Dustless's body. Hancock asked with concern. Z's strength was unfathomable, and the entire Mariewa might be destroyed by the fight. Of course, this is only the case where the five deliberately indulge. Well, thinking of Z's nature, Wu Chen's eyes flashed with a bone-piercing cold light. He sneered, I've given him a chance. If that old guy really comes back, then I'll take his little life. The sonorous and powerful voice contains confidence. Z is very powerful. Dustless also has 100% certainty to take him down. No one can pose much threat to him. But then again, Doflamingo's next goal is the King of Dressrosa. With his forehead squeezed together, Dustless remembered that Doflamingo has become a Shichibukai. I am afraid that his next plan is to seek the position of the King of Dressrosa. Caesar can also secretly create Pluto under his protection. Perfect and consolidate Dustless's ambition to unify the world. Chapter 573. Returning to the battleship, Z's face was twitching. The students were snoring and sleeping. There was saliva on the corners of their mouths. Their expressions were rich and comfortable. Obviously they were having a good dream. Who is that guy? Looking at the direction of Dustless's villa, Z's heart was mixed. He knew that this was Dustless' intention to let him go. Z was also prepared to die in battle, but he didn't expect Dustless to play this kind of trick. No matter from any point of view, this is an unsolvable dead end. After thinking about it for a while, Z no longer entangled himself. There was a saying that it was better to live than to die. Since he knew that Wu Chen intended to let him go, it was impossible for him to foolishly go back to die. After resting for about half a day, Z chose to leave Mariewa. These remaining students were really tired and needed to be given time to relax. Looking around, Z's current students, many of them will become the future mainstays, such as Smoker, who has outstanding strength. They are all here. Above the tall building, looking down at the battleship far away, even if it has become a tiny black dot, Dustless can see it clearly under his eyes. For him, distance is just a concept. Separated from each other by the ends of the earth, it is also insignificant. It seems that you are not a reckless man. Retracting his gaze, Dustless walked into the room with light steps. A huge narrow map came into view, and it was densely covered with red and white flags. White represents the Navy, while red represents the pirates. The whole map is almost occupied by the red pirate flag, everywhere in the four seas, as well as the New World. The power is far larger than Marine. It is a behemoth that can crush Marine. With such a big disadvantage, the Marines should have been strangled. The actual reason why they were able to survive until now was because the pirates were in a state of disunity. Otherwise, if all their forces were concentrated, the Marines would have been wiped out forever. In the future, the Yonko, four emperors, Whitebeard pirates almost destroyed the Marine headquarters. The power of all the pirates in the world can be imagined. How to lead one's own forces to survive was indeed a question worthy of consideration. Although Dustless's current strength could be said to be invincible, nothing was absolute. There was absolutely nothing wrong with taking a long-term view. The next step should be to obtain Dressrosa, to help that old brat Doflamingo ascend the throne. His gaze fell on the narrow island of Dressrosa. Dustless's eyes, which were usually calm, were filled with the flames of ambition. The weak are prey to the strong. Since you can't keep up with the times, you can only bid farewell to this world, royal family of Luke. Living a comfortable life would only cause creatures to stop evolving and lose the will to forge ahead. Dressrosa was like that now. They were completely going with the flow. Living a stable life, they were seizing every moment. It was no wonder that they were ruthlessly crushed by Doflamingo. Every man for himself. Dustless would only show his benevolent heart to his own people. As for others, he would see if they had any value. Beep beep beep. The blue den mushy on the left side of the map rang, and Doflamingo's voice sounded. Surprisingly, there was no joy in his voice. Instead, there was dissatisfaction. Did Sengoku go back on his word? Dustless sat down casually and asked calmly. On the other side, Doflamingo was startled, then shook his head and said to Dustless's den mushy, "That's not it. He has already announced in front of the world. Going back on his word is like shooting himself in the foot. The Marine is righteous. Naturally, it's impossible for them to be like a pirate who doesn't keep his word. If they speak out, they will be hated by the whole world. The prestige of the Marine will be greatly reduced. I sent someone to inform Dressrosa to hand over the throne of the Don Quixote family. That old brat refused my offer." Doflamingo said angrily. A mere ant dared to refuse his offer. This is tantamount to slapping his face. The throne of the royal family originally belonged to the Don Quixote family. Taking back the former throne, this is the most normal thing in Doflamingo's view. This is normal. If it was me, it would be impossible to hand over the throne. The people of the royal family are still very popular. Even if you forcibly take away his throne, the local people will not recognize your existence. Dustless explained lightly. The interest in his heart was swept away. He thought that Doflamingo was talking about an interesting topic. He didn't expect the content to be so boring. Indeed. Doflamingo nodded in agreement. It's easy to kill an ant. The key is to make the people accept him as the new king. Although he can't wait to eliminate the group of ants, Doflamingo still needs these people to create the illusion of peace and prosperity, to confuse the world. Only in this way can he cover up some shady things in the dark. Even a wise man will make a mistake. Dustless sighed in his heart. He didn't expect Doflamingo to make such a big mistake. This is obviously the strength of this kid. If there are no conditions, you can create conditions. Wu Chen's eyes glowed with a ruthless light. He was not a soft-hearted person. He said in a cold voice, use your fruit's ability to temporarily control King Luke to slaughter the islanders. Of course, that includes the soldiers he leads. At that time, you can save them as a savior and wash away the image of a butcher. This is just my idea. It's up to you whether to use it or not. After that, without waiting for Doflamingo to answer, Wu Chen simply hung up the Den Den Mushi, and his eyes once again fell on the huge long and narrow map, and his eyes sometimes showed a strange look. On the other side of the Den Den Mushi, Doflamingo was stunned. He didn't expect Dustless to be so ruthless. But after thinking about it, he thought that this is indeed a feasible plan and the most effective and direct. A group of ants is dead. Anyway, the number of towns destroyed by Doflamingo can be counted on 2 hands. One more island is not a big deal. Chapter 574. Doflamingo's choice has nothing to do with Dustless. The former is more anxious than him, and human life is equivalent to grass for a pirate like Doflamingo who kills people like flax. According to Dustless's speculation, Doflamingo can't wait to implement this ruthless plan, which is comparable to his ambition to swallow the sky and devour the earth. The death of a few human lives is insignificant, it's just a small matter. Dustless is still interested in setting his future plans. If he wants to get a share of the pie in the future world, he must have a perfect plan for rainy days. The opportunity will not come again, and it is often left to those who are prepared in advance. Dustless's plan is also quite simple: suppress the enemy and strengthen himself. Both the Akagami, Red Hair, pirates and the Kaido pirates have been weakened by him in various ways. Compared with the miserable Akagami, Red Hair, pirates who were almost killed, the Kaido pirates are much stronger. Although they were also extremely tragic by Dustless, they are much better than Akagami, Red Hair, Shanks who withdrew from the New World. Next is the Big Imam pirates, and the Whitebeard pirates. The world is so big that the 4 seas are still okay. In the second half of the New World, most of it is occupied by the Yonko, 4 emperors. If you want to grab food from the tiger's mouth, you can only pull the teeth from the tiger's mouth. However, this is tantamount to self-destruction for most pirates. The power of the Yonko, 4 emperors, is beyond imagination. Dustless, Sama, what you want is here. White Zetsu emerged from the ground, holding a delicate iron box in his hands, quietly buckling the lid and baking it with an extremely strong iron lock, looking quite mysterious. In order to provoke the Whitebeard pirates and the Big Imam pirates, Dustless spent a lot of money. Isn't it a pity to give this thing to that old witch by Gumamu? No matter what, it's still the strongest and most evil dark fruit of the Logia. The dark fruit in this iron box is Logia's dark fruit, known as the most evil fruit in history. Its ability is terrible and it can form a black hole like gravity that swallows everything. How could White Zetsu be willing to give away such a powerful devil fruit to Big Imam, that old witch? It took him nearly a year to find this devil fruit with countless doppelgangers. Big Imam, that old witch, is ashamed. Why don't you give it to Miss? I think it will be of great use to her. Staring at Dustless, White Zetsu suggested tentatively. The matter of giving birth to a daughter was said by Dustless himself. There was a flash of hesitation in his eyes, and then he shook his head decisively. This plan is not feasible. It's still too early for that little girl to use the devil fruit. Let her waste it. Moon twos. What's more, if he secretly fed the dark fruit to Yushik, Dustless would guarantee that Kagaya would hunt him down all over the world. Secondly, using the devil fruit was equivalent to having an additional weakness. He would become a non-swimmer and unable to step into the sea. And this weakness is well known to the world. At first, Dustless also had the idea of dark fruit, but he had the system's bugs, existence and didn't care about the gains and losses of a devil fruit. But giving the dark fruit to the Bigumam pirates will cause the power of their pirates to expand rapidly. White Zetsu murmured, he has also heard of the dark fruit's heaven-defyings. It is far more heaven-defying than ordinary Logia's ability. It doesn't matter, as long as you can provoke Bigumam and Whitebeard to fight, a devil fruit is insignificant. Dustless said quite casually, White Zetsu's problem is not a problem. Even if the dark fruit is eaten, it is not a big problem, as long as the other party is killed. At that time, the dark fruit will reappear again. With White Zetsu's huge clone, it is only a matter of time to find it. Whitebeard is very cunning. That guy should not rashly fight with Bigumam for a devil fruit. White Zetsu said with a little doubt. Even if the Yonko, for emperors, have grievances, they will maintain great restraint. Once the fight starts, the Marines who are watching the fire from the other side of the river and other ambitious pirates who covet the position of Yonko, for emperors. Ants can bite an elephant to death, and the power of countless ants can also collapse a river dam. It is not difficult to tear apart the tired Yonko, for emperors. Whitebeard will not be his opponent, but Blackbeard is anxiously waiting. Dustless smiled calmly when he heard this. Whitebeard will not do it, but Blackbeard, a man with ambition who can swallow the 4 seas, will not give up. His purpose of hiding the Whitebeard pirates for so many years is to get this most evil fruit in history. If the 2 overlords don't do anything, their pirates will fight. At that time, they will naturally jump from behind the scenes to the front. Dustless is the master of protecting his children, and Bigumam also can't rub sand in his eyes. The 2 of them are naturally dry wood and fire. They don't need Dustless to fan the flames to fight. Reluctantly handing the dark fruit to Dustless, White Zetsu also understands that he can't catch the wolf without sacrificing the child. If he wants to hook a scheming man like Blackbeard, only the dark fruit can attract his appetite. Today, Blackbeard is also extremely powerful. The 3 scars on red hair Shank's eyes were his masterpiece, and he himself had a few teeth knocked out. No matter what, it's still mine in the end. With a blazing heat in his hand, Dustless easily melted the iron box, revealing a strange purple fruit full of patterns. The surface gives people a feeling of extreme evil. A coldness that pierces the depths of the soul spreads from it. When the host of the fruit was killed, the ability would not disappear. Instead, it would appear in a different form. From the beginning to the end, this devil fruit would not escape the control of Dustless. Even if it was eaten by Whitebeard in the future, he could just kill him. Chapter 575. Wanting to get something without paying is tantamount to a fool's dream. The risk of this rash action is great and the harvest is extremely optimistic. Once the remaining 2 Yonko, for emperors, fight, the situation of the whole world will inevitably be affected. Dustless can also take advantage of this situation and implement his plan. No matter who gets the dark fruit in the end, it doesn't matter. Find an opportunity to give it to the crew of the Bigumam pirates, and then announce the news to the world. Dustless's eyes flashed with a cold light, and he sneered with killing intent. Then announce the news to the world and push Bigumam and her pirates to the forefront. The corners of Wu Chen's mouth curled up in a playful smile as he gloated. It doesn't matter whether it can attract others or not. In short, Blackbeard, the cat that smells blood, will never watch the ultimate devil fruit that he has been pursuing for a lifetime fall into the hands of Bigumam. It's a pity. I heard that this dark fruit can devour other abilities. Taking the dark fruit handed over by Dustless, White Zetsu said regretfully, and his tone was full of melancholy. Bigumam's brain may be damaged by anger. The only thing that can devour other abilities and occupy the other's ability for its own use is the dark fruit. Devouring the enemy's ability, this is also a rule that varies from person to person. Even if Big Mom really eats the dark fruit, she can't occupy the ability of others. With his eyes shining, Dustless murmured with interest, Blackbeard can swallow other people's abilities. The biggest factor is that his body structure is alien. It is precisely because Blackbeard's body is different from ordinary people that he can accommodate other abilities. If it was someone else, they may not be able to do this. Perhaps Blackbeard knows that his body structure is special, so he happily spends his life pursuing the dark fruit. In short, as long as this news is spread, we can watch from the sidelines. Even if Blackbeard is reluctant, he must be hostile to Big Mom. This is an open conspiracy, and it's not up to him to choose. Blackbeard, who is almost obsessed with the dark fruit, even if he knows that Dustless is behind the scenes, he has to step into this trap. What can he do if he knows that this is a conspiracy? He had no choice but to crawl inside obediently. This was the highest level of crafty schemes and machinations. 5 days later, on an island in the New World, White Zetsu carried out the steps in Dustless's plan step by step, allowing the crew of the Big Mom pirates to accidentally encounter the evilest devil fruit in the world, dark fruit. It has to be said that the marine is depraved, but compared to the ugly pirates, the plot is much more noble. At least they won't do such a crazy thing as killing their companions. After accidentally discovering the devil fruit, the first thing these loyal subordinates of Big Mom thought of was not to tell Big Mom about the boss. Instead, several crew members with evil intentions silenced their companions. He intended to take the devil fruit for himself. It is reasonable to have evil intentions. The devil fruit illustration handbook recorded that this dark fruit is the evilest fruit in history. How can such an introduction be an ordinary thing? This sudden change was also beyond Dustless's expectations. Although this was the case, it was also what he wanted. Because of this, it was more confirmed that this was the dark fruit, so that some people with ulterior motives would think that this was hearsay. Because of the uneven distribution of the loot, it caused the crew to kill each other. This kind of thing happened everywhere. The episode of killing between the crew added a lot of suspense. The devil fruit that can cause the crew of the Yonko, 4 emperors, to kill each other must not be ordinary. This also confirmed the identity of the dark fruit. Secretly, Dustless used the huge privileges of the Tenryubito to add fuel to the fire. In just less than a day, this news that should have been limited to the Big Mom pirates swept across the New World like a hurricane. Enough to destroy the New World, the strongest dark fruit in the world appeared in the Big Mom pirates, and it was accompanied by several undeniable photos. Such shocking news appeared in newspapers all over the world the next day, and it became known to the world at an incredible speed. Among them, the most shocked was Big Mom, one of the Yonko, 4 emperors. To be honest, it was just a devil fruit. Although it was powerful beyond imagination, Big Mom didn't care much because she was already an ability user, and the devil fruit was useless. What made it most difficult for her to accept was that the people who killed the crew were the few people she trusted the most, and they secretly did such a dirty thing behind her back. It was unforgivable. Those who tried to take the dark fruit were melted by her inhumane use of gastric juice. Big Mom also knew the temptation of the dark fruit. It was definitely not worse than Whitebeard's tremor fruit, Gura no Mi. However, the name of the Big Mom pirates was enough to stop those pirates. Although there were some who came to ask for the dark fruit, it was best to be mercilessly dismembered. Bastard, of all people, why did you have to go to that old hag? The night sky was particularly quiet, and the tall Blackbeard roared angrily. His eyes were fixed on the devil fruit on the screen. He could be 100% sure that this was the legendary dark fruit. Thinking of Baigu Mamu's terrifying strength, Blackbeard broke out in a cold sweat. His heart was filled with fear. Unlike the heroic great pirates, Blackbeard had a huge disadvantage, or it could be said that his character was flawed. Whether it was Hundred Beast Kaido, red-haired Shanks, or Whitebeard, they all turned a deaf ear to life in the battle and held the mentality of fighting with their lives. Only Blackbeard was afraid of death. Of course, this is also human nature. It shows that compared to other pirates, Blackbeard is more cunning and realistic. He considers his life in everything. If his life is gone, what's the use of getting the dark fruit? The cautious Blackbeard naturally wouldn't be an idiot to fight Big Mom alone. Chapter 576. Inside Mariehua's villa. White Zetsu performs his daily fixed duties and informs Dustless of all the important information collected, and Dustless uses the unparalleled power of Tenryubito to spread the news of the dark fruit, and the whole world is shrouded in a giant vortex. The bottomless invisible vortex is spreading, attracting the eyes of the major forces. Although the ability of the fruit varies from person to person, if you find a good seedling and cultivate it a little and give it to them, it will be a powerful battle power in the future, and it can even reach the level of an admiral. It is self-evident what it means for a pirate group to have a super battle power comparable to an admiral. Big Mom is also a smart person. These days, he is looking for the right candidate, but he suddenly realized that there seems to be no such person in his huge pirate group. How many people are worthy of trust if the person she once trusted can steal the dark fruit without her knowing? Maybe many people have already planned how to take the head of her captain. There were as many talented people as there were carps crossing the river. Whether or not they were completely loyal was a big question mark. Such a serious question had to be handled carefully. Otherwise, if they nurtured an ingrate, the gains would not make up for the losses. Blackbeard has been staying in the Whitebeard pirates with peace of mind, and there is no big movement. White Zetsu whispered, and he couldn't help but look at Blackbeard. Blackbeard is much calmer than he imagined, and he can maintain a clear mind in the face of fatal temptation. Blackbeard knows that the more urgent the matter is, the more important it is to have a calm heart, so he is currently as calm as a stone, but silently chooses to observe the movement. Baigu Mamu was not a gentle sheep. Anyone who dared to touch a tiger's but would end up being torn into pieces. Don't underestimate Blackbeard. There will always be a time when a wild beast shows its fangs. His ambition is not to settle things peacefully. He is only waiting for the perfect opportunity to deliver a fatal blow. Dustless said softly, his indifferent tone was filled with certainty. The value of the dark fruit is equivalent to Blackbeard's second life. How can he give up his second life if he is afraid of death? The most cunning creatures in the world are humans, and the most treacherous among humans are those who have abandoned their dignity. Dustless said calmly. His words flowed like a river and were filled with absolute wisdom. To them, victory, defeat, glory, and personal dignity can all be laughed away. And Blackbeard is precisely such a person. Needless to say, Blackbeard did not care about personal glory. To him, fame and fortune were just fleeting clouds. He was powerful and had once seriously injured Red Hair. The 3 scars on Red Hair's eyes were all thanks to Blackbeard. Even so, he was content to be a small soldier under Whitebeard, abandoning his dignity and glory to be an ordinary crew member, abandoning the fame and fortune that pirates value the most, and living in obscurity for decades. In addition, Blackbeard was extremely greedy for life and afraid of death. Every time he schemed, he would bear the brunt of it. What he valued the most was his own life. Compared to those who risked their lives for another and viewed life as a feather, Blackbeard was far inferior. This was his bad habit, but it was also Blackbeard's biggest advantage. It was because he was greedy for life and afraid of death that he was able to display what he had learned and plan all his plans to the point that they were flawless. This was the only way to ensure the safety of his little life. That is to say, Blackbeard is waiting for the best moment. White Zetsu said. Dustless heard the words and nodded slightly. The probability of Blackbeard making a move is 0 if he is not 100% sure. What is 100% absolute certainty? At least he can save his own life, otherwise, it would be useless to get the dark fruit. Then again. Staring at White Zetsu, Dustless suddenly turned around. After a little thought, he asked directly, "What is the recent movement of Doflamingo?" Although the current main plan is to stir up trouble with Big's mom and Whitebeard, the trace of the clown Doflamingo is also very important. Dustless also needs his Dressrosa to build Pluton. This, White Zetsu's face changed slightly, and he was suddenly speechless. He looked at Dustless with a little timidity. Witnessing the cold, emotionless, machine-like Dustless, his scalp couldn't help but tingle. Doflamingo used birdcage on Dressrosa. The outside world has no way to know the specifics, but according to the raging flames in the town and the scene of blood flowing like a river, at this point, White Zetsu's tone stopped. The meaning behind it was self-evident. Dressrosa was now like a second world isolated from the rest of the world. As for the specifics, only the initiator, Doflamingo, and the heavens knew. In short, there is no need to think about it. Dressrosa is definitely bleeding like a river now. That kid, his strength is average, but he has a lot of tricks up his sleeve. After a moment of silence, Dustless said with ridicule and disdain. According to Dustless's speculation and his strange movements a while ago, it is estimated that Doflamingo is preparing for the artificial devil fruit in advance. Early the next morning, the sky in the distance turned white, the sun rose high, and the fiery red morning sun dotted the whole world. The warm feeling made people lazy and couldn't help but want to go back to sleep. On the ship, Blackbeard did not sleep for the entire night. Even so, he was still full of energy. His eyes were shining with awe-inspiring luster. There was an indescribable sense of confidence and ruthlessness between his eyebrows. It was the complete opposite of his usual introverted aura. Blackbeard narrowed his eyes. He was as cunning as a rat. The gaze that shot out from the slits of his eyes was exceptionally vicious. It was as if he was choosing to devour someone. His cold lips were raised high. Even though he concealed his smile very well, one could still see the curve of his lips. After a night, he had already thought of countermeasures to deal with it. It is definitely not possible to fight alone. He can only fool the Whitebeard pirates to fight together. Whitebeard is very rational and smart, but it does not mean that the IQ of his crew is unfathomable. Chapter 577. Ha ha ha, Blackbeard's face was full of fanaticism, and his longing eyes had already seen the scene of him stepping on Whitebeard's body to become the supreme hegemon. Gritting his teeth, he was filled with boundless hope for the future. After enduring patiently for several decades, he might be able to prove his Tao and become a god in a few days. From then on, he would step onto the path of light. Why are you laughing so early in the morning, idiot Titch? My dream of becoming the Pirate King was ruined by you, Titch. Don't mind him. He always has this kind of silly moment. The awakened Whitebeard pirates complained with dissatisfaction, their eyes full of grief, but even so, they only protested verbally, and this scene was not surprising. Everyone thinks that Titch is a trustworthy person. Subconsciously, they have regarded him as a brother. I'm sorry. You know, I'm extremely optimistic. Sometimes my body can't help but vent its excitement. Scratching his head awkwardly, Blackbeard put on an honest look. Although it looked neither fish nor fowl, no one doubted him. The Whitebeard pirates were also speechless. They all thought that Blackbeard was showing his true feelings. A group of idiots. On the surface, he was smiling, but in his heart, he was cursing the group of idiots in front of him. After following Whitebeard for a long time, they had also developed a heroic spirit. Their hearts were as broad as the vast sea. However, for a cunning pirate, this is not a good sign. If you want to survive in this chaotic world, you can't be careless with anyone, even your companions are no exception. No one knows what's in the other's mind, so it's better to be careful. Regardless of this group of people, he looked at the person washing on the bow deck. It was Thatch, the captain of the 4th Division, and he was also a good friend of Blackbeard. Of course, he has a good relationship with Thatch. This is the reason why Blackbeard deliberately pulled him into the relationship. Thatch is approachable, and he is much more naive than the suspicious Captain Mark and the Diamond Josu. It also shows that he is much easier to deceive. Pull him into the water, Whitebeard can't ignore it. It's better to let Thatch get hurt. This will inevitably arouse Whitebeard's anger and he will desperately fight with Bigu's mom. Blackbeard was very proud. After observing Whitebeard for nearly 10 years, he had figured out Whitebeard and the temperament of this group of crew members. What drew these crew members from all over the world and with different skin colors together was Whitebeard's broad mind and the sincere feelings between them. Once the crew members are bullied and wronged, the entire Whitebeard pirates will attack them. Captain Thatch, it's not good, my father is in danger. Realizing that there was no one around, Blackbeard squeezed out tears from the corners of his eyes and ran to Surd's side. His bitter and pained face was 10 times uglier than the death of his father. What do you mean? Being suddenly asked by Blackbeard, Thatch's face was full of confusion. Obviously, he didn't realize what Blackbeard meant. He just puzzled, although my father's body is getting worse year by year, he can live for another 10 or 20 years without any problem. Whitebeard's physique is extraordinary and he is beyond normal human beings. After becoming one of the Yonko, 4 emperors, the number of people who dare to provoke Whitebeard has gradually decreased. Recently, Whitebeard has rarely made a move and has a lot of time to rest. You are talking about a natural situation without the interference of external factors, but for example, with a sly smile in his eyes, Blackbeard raised his voice and said, "The world has not been calm recently. No one dares to provoke the Whitebeard pirates because of my father's name. But as you said, my father's body is getting worse year by year. One day, he will be dragged down. At that time, other pirates will dismember us." Blackbeard pretended to be anxious and worried, looking like he was worried about the country and the people. This scared Surd into a daze. This is indeed a major problem, but there is no need to worry about it. Thatch obviously heard the meaning of alarmism, but he didn't doubt Blackbeard. The idea of the Whitebeard pirates' crew being a family has been deeply ingrained in his mind. It is impossible for him to doubt his brother. He didn't expect Blackbeard to be more insidious in his calculations. That is also a matter of more than 10 years later. There is no need to worry about it now. By then, we will be able to support one side of the sky. Thatch said confidently as the haze was swept away. You are such a half-baked person. There will be no stage for a vassal like you in the future. His heart was full of contempt and disdain. He sneered at Thatch's confidence, but on the surface, he was very heavy. That was before. Now the situation has changed. After a pause, Blackbeard said, "The appearance of the dark fruit is bound to increase the strength of the Bigumam pirates in a short period of time. Maybe soon, there will be one more powerful battle power. You know what it means. Although we have no direct conflict with the Bigumam pirates, no one will care about their territory." Thatch's expression solidified and he nodded thoughtfully. This is indeed a big problem. The sudden appearance of the dark fruit will increase the strength of the Bigumam pirates. Although there is no direct conflict, the Yonko, 4 emperors, are all potential competitors, which is known to all. I've had enough of the fish. Looking at Thatch vaguely, Blackbeard smiled. It was not difficult to see from his expression that Thatch's heart was shaken. When he was about to add fuel to the fire, his back suddenly felt cold. Strange, he turned his head around strangely, his eyes emitting a dim light. Combined with his rough and ferocious face, he looked particularly frightening. His eyes stared at the dense forest on the island. He suddenly felt a pair of eyes spying on him. Chapter 578. Blackbeard's brows furrowed tightly together. Even though it was just his intuition, he was a suspicious person by nature. The sudden appearance of this strange feeling made him extremely uncomfortable. It was extremely difficult for him to ignore it and pretend that nothing had happened. Maybe it's really my illusion, his observation hockey spread, and after a careful perception, he noticed that there was no one around. It was dead silent. Only occasionally, there were a few solitary birds passing by. Blackbeard's suspicious heart was quiet. He turned his head and continued to talk to Surt about the perfect plan to save his father from the fire and water. Is that man Blackbeard? I thought that Dustless Sama was exaggerating about him. I didn't expect this guy to be so unfathomable. His strength is different from what he showed on the surface. White Zetsu in the depths of the ground was stunned. About half an hour later, he realized that Blackbeard's ship had left. He came out of the ground and sucked in the fresh air of the outside world, trying to calm himself down. White Zetsu's heart was pounding wildly. Once Blackbeard locked onto him, White Zetsu was 100% sure that he would be killed or killed. Blackbeard was not a good person. But it seems that Dustless Sama's strategy seems to have succeeded. Staring at the battleship in the distance, Baiju raised his eyebrows and sneered. The master who created him was Wu Qin. He understood Wu Chen's means better than ordinary people. Being unable to live or die was just the beginning. Each person who looked down on Dustless all had abnormally miserable endings. No, this idea is really idiotic. How could this group of clowns who were casually played with know that the person behind the scenes was Dustless Sama? White Zetsu smiled bitterly at himself. The world regarded this as an accidental accident. Sending out the strongest fruit with the title of history's evilest, the dark fruit, calmly as bait, there is no such person who can have such a temperament. To some extent, this possibility does not exist. There is no absolute in the world, no perfect plan. Any plan designed by people always has unknown flaws. If it is eaten by others, the loss is not worth the gain. In fact, Dustless was willing to give away the dark fruit. He was able to let it go and never cared about the gains and losses of the devil fruit. Even if he was eaten, it wouldn't change anything. Time flew by. Unknowingly, several days had passed. Time was precious when you cared about it, but when you ignored it, it became worthless. He completely ignored the concept of time, and everything passed extremely quickly. War is cruel and ever-changing. The Big Imam pirates got the news of the dark fruit. Due to Dustless's reclusion behind the scenes, at first, it was just pirates from the New World. As time passed, some pirates from the Four Seas also heard the news. Big Imam is terrible, but there are some evil people who are not afraid of death, and then they provoke the Big Imam pirates 3 times in a row, trying to get the favor of the goddess of luck. Of course, they still received the grim smile of the Grim Reaper in the end. This group of people is the main force of this battle. In the dark ice cellar, there were coffins placed neatly, which was used by Dustless to store the corpses, including the corpses of the previous Hokage. They were responsible for the main combat mission this time. Summoning Jutsu, Edo Tensei. As Dustless shouted, the unmoving coffin on the ground suddenly lifted up. Then, the entire surface of the coffin burst open, revealing a few familiar cold faces. Then, after a few seconds, they all opened their eyes. Whiz! 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 Several sharp sounds broke through the air in succession. In the darkness where you couldn't see your own fingers, you could vaguely see a few hazy black shadows pouncing on Wu Qin from all directions. Their hands were shining with cold light, and they were obviously holding sharp weapons. As expected, keeping your consciousness was the wrong choice. Although a pure killing machine is cruel, it is very suitable for old antiques like you. His left eye suddenly turned into Rinnegan, and the calm corner of his clothes was blown up, followed by an invisible repulsive force that was unstoppable. Shinra Tensei. Bang bang bang. Several shadows were forced back in the blink of an eye, and their bodies were ruthlessly scattered. Their faces came into view. They were the previous Hokage led by Hashirama. Even with the immortal body, it is easy to kill you. You don't want to die again. Dustless's eyes were as calm as stagnant water, and he looked indifferently at the people who were knocked down. His emotionless expression and cold voice coincided with the cold killing machine. Have you ever seen a Hokage compromise with the enemy? Uchiha Dustless. An old but full of energy roared. It was the Sandaime Hokage who was glaring at them. The other Hokages were silent, their eyes were cold as they stared at Wuchen, silently expressing their position. In that case, I can only deprive you of your consciousness. Although your combat power will decrease, it doesn't matter, the immortal body is enough to make up for the decrease in strength. With a strange smile, the originally expressive faces of the Hokage instantly became pale and indifferent, and their eyes were replaced by emptiness. In an instant, Dustless brutally deprived them of their consciousness. Originally, for the sake of Tsunade's face, I could reluctantly let you go once and keep your own consciousness. You don't know what's good for you, so you can only blame yourself for this. Dustless glanced at them indifferently. These so-called Hokage are still stubborn, and now things have changed, and time and space have changed, and the deep-rooted ideas in their hearts seem to be affecting their reason. There was no market for the will of fire in the past. Now in this world, there was similarly no market. But to Dustless, these few super powerhouses were all divine weapons used to kill in the dark. It doesn't matter if their strength decreases, the immortal body is enough to make up for the deficiency. In this world, no one knows the truth-seeking bull. Chapter 579. Pursing his lips, Wuchen was disdainful of these old fogies in front of him. They were always talking about unity and guarding the future, but they have always been singing a one-man show. In the past, no one cared about them. The situation in this world is more complicated and changeable. Their saintly mentality will only make them a laughingstock. Ninjas are very ugly, but they are slightly inferior to pirates. Pirates have no morality. 1 second, they can call each other brothers, and the next second, they can fight against each other. Time passed quickly, and 7 days passed in a blink of an eye. Because of Dustless's interference, the whole world was full of gunpowder, so almost all the pirates stared at the movements of the Bigumamu pirates and became the target of public criticism in an instant. During this period, it is worth mentioning that Thatch, the captain of the 4th Division under Whitebeard, came to secretly steal the dark fruit. He was easily defeated by Bigumamu and tore off an arm of the other party. Even Blackbeard was beaten to a pulp. Whitebeard knew that he went berserk on the spot and led the entire Whitebeard pirates to invade. He fought with the Bigumamu pirates for a day and gained the upper hand. Now Whitebeard is only in his 60s. Although his body has begun to decline, he is still in the golden age of his peak and can be said to be invincible. As one of the Yonko, 4 emperors, Bigumamu is obviously inferior to Whitebeard. Using the powerful ability of Tremor Fruit, Gura Gura no Mi, and showing the power to destroy the world, he easily destroyed the island where Bigumamu was entrenched and temporarily repelled the Bigumamu pirates. Damn, someone must have plotted against me, damn dark fruit. Countless blood vessels spread in her eyes, and Bigumamu roared angrily, venting her inner depression and indignation. Looking at her, her body was not inferior to the giant clan. Her body was covered with blood, and even some parts had traces of depression. These were all thanks to Whitebeard. This is too strange. It must be some bastard who plotted against me. If I don't break your bones and scatter your ashes, I can't vent the hatred in my heart. Bigumamu gasped and roared in a low voice, no different from a hysterical beast. At first, Big Mama didn't think much of it, but later, as more and more pirates challenged her, she suddenly realized that something was wrong. The Big-A-Man pirates are powerful enough to destroy the world, but if they are targeted by the whole world, they will die. It is obvious that someone is plotting against her and she has become the target of the whole world. Bang! He angrily threw the metal box containing the dark fruit away, and a dent was formed on the deck of the battleship. As if he was still angry, he stomped on it a few times. Baigu Mamu's heart felt stifled. If it weren't for the fact that there were so many people around, she would have given herself a slap. Her whole body was trembling with anger, and her eyes were about to pop out. This was not the strongest devil fruit that could increase the fleet's strength, but a well-deserved death curse. It won't take long for the Big-A-Man pirates to be wiped out by the whole world. Boom boom boom. The dizzying roar suddenly came, and the surrounding sea shook violently. Baigu Mamu, who was caught off guard, was splashed with water stains all over her body. The cold sea water was biting and cold. Instead of extinguishing the fire in Baigu Mamu's heart, the fire became bigger and bigger, burning her reason. Marine. A group of shameless villains, still as despicable as ever. There is a bottom line for looking down on people. Yonko, for emperors, is Yonko, for emperors, unless the two old things Garp and Sengoku come in person. Baigu Mamu sneered again and again, and the two characters, Garp and Sengoku, came to her and gave her a headache. After all, both of them had fought with Roger, and their strength was almost deified. In fact, Baigu Mamu was not afraid of Garp and Sengoku, but that was before. She had fought with Whitebeard for nearly a day and suffered a lot of injuries. She had no energy to deal with peerless powerhouses like Sengoku and Garp. If other people come, they will die. Even if an admiral comes, Baigu Mamu will dare to fight, not to mention that Marine Admiral is in a miserable state. Mom, the Marine is here. A group of embarrassed younger brothers ran over and attached themselves to Baigu Mamu, tired of dealing with them. Their expressions were decadent, and their exhausted appearance was obviously mentally and physically exhausted. These days, they have fought against many opponents, and their energy has long been squandered. Baigu Mamu's eyes narrowed, and the expressions of these people were all in her eyes. On the surface, she was unmoved, but in fact, she was secretly worried. Once the people's hearts were scattered, her pirates were about to come to an end. It seems that it is necessary to win a battle to restore confidence. Staring at the marine fleet in the distance, Baigu Mamu intended to kill the chicken to warn the monkey. When she was about to send the pirates over, a sentence from her subordinates abruptly broke her dream. Garp, that old thing, personally led the team, followed by a young man. According to the outline, it is very similar to the honorary admiral in the Marine newspaper last time. The merciless words made Baigu Mamu's face red and her neck thick. She held back her words for a long time and took them back. An admiral and Garp, I am afraid that it is likely to be her. After days of hard fighting, it is not suitable to fight again, quickly retreat. Baigu Mamu showed an expression of sympathy for her subordinates, but her expression was extremely ugly, and she was more sad than eating 10 pounds of flies. The crew didn't talk nonsense when they heard this, and they drove the ships at full power to avoid the Marines' shelling. The energy of people has a limit, and they have reached the bottleneck. How could it be that kid? With the excellent vision of the telescope, Baigu's mom saw Wu Qin standing side by side with Garp at a glance. She immediately widened her eyes and said incredulously. At the same time, she didn't forget to reprimand her subordinates. Increase the speed of navigation. Who dares to slack off, I will throw him into the sea to fill the stomach of the Sea King. Baigu Mamu's old face twitched, and she cursed her bad luck. Dustless's strength was enough to fight the Yonko, 4 emperors, and even suppressed the strength of the Yonko, 4 emperors. Once such a person joins forces with Garp, I am afraid that in the future, there will be a big pirate named Baigu Mamu. P.S. Baigumamu's men did call her mother, which sounds disgusting, but the truth. Chapter 580. Boom boom boom, monstrous waves were set off around the fleet, and the sea water of more than 10 meters almost swallowed the Baigumamu pirates. The sea water had wet Baigumamu's bulky coat. Nevertheless, her forehead was sweating uncontrollably. For the first time in her life, she showed a fearful expression. Now she was already bruised, and Garp was enough for her to drink a pot. If dustless was added. Thinking about it, Baigumamu couldn't help but feel a chill, and her body uncontrollably retreated. Big bandits like Bigu's mom were not afraid of death, but if the enemy was an invincible existence, then they would be an idiot to recklessly face it head-on. Of the 36 stratagems, escape is the best stratagem, which is vividly reflected in the hands of pirates. Although her teeth were itching with anger, Baigumamu had to admit that going against the current would only lead to her own destruction, and she had to escape. This is the way to survive. Where there is life, there is hope. Let's wait and see. Through the sight of the telescope, she glanced fiercely at the Marines, and with the most vicious language in her life, she did not hesitate to curse the attacking Marines. Well, what's with that guy's eyes? Her eyes suddenly fell on Dustless, and Baigumamu was surprised. Dustless seemed to be aware of Baigumamu's spying, and he raised the corners of his mouth, with a bright smile. He looked quite approachable, and his smile was like a warm spring breeze in March, which was refreshing. However, Baigumamu's eyes were full of different meanings. Contempt, ridicule. In short, Baigumamu's eyes were laughing at her powerlessness. Dustless's light and elegant smile was the embodiment of her powerlessness. It was precisely because she couldn't threaten Wu Qin with her strength that the latter had such a relaxed expression. He was quietly contemptuous and didn't need any words to modify it. The calmer Dustless was, the more it was an insult to Baigumamu, a naked contempt. In the dark, Baigumamu saw Dustless's unscrupulous ridicule, and her eyes were about to burst. Mom, you, the crew members looked at Baigumamu in fear. In a trance, they even saw the miserable appearance of Baigumamu, and subconsciously took a step back. Baigumam pirates, Captain Charlotte Lingling, bounty of, one of the Gyonko, for emperors, in the second half of the New World, the crew called her, Mother, when she was young. Dustless looked at the information about Bigu's mom in his hand. It was all sent by the Navy. It was just simple basic information. For Dustless, as an honorary admiral, it was just a small matter. Dustless had a strange expression on his face when he saw the word mother. Hee hee. It seems like you have the same idea as this old man. Seeing Dustless's strange expression, Garp's face was full of wretchedness, and his strange laughter made people speechless and tangled. He patted Dustless's shoulder quite familiarly, and then leaned close to Dustless's ear. When he looked around and no one was around, Garp's face changed into a gossipy expression. Whitebeard's crew called him Father, and Baigumamu's crew called him Mother. Both of them belong to the giant clan, and they are also one of the Gyonko, for emperors. Do you think they hooked up with each other when they were young? Otherwise, how could it be so coincidental? Garp asked with a smirk on his face. Occasionally, his eyes would sparkle in agreement. Isn't there a saying that goes, if you are fated to meet each other, even if you are 1,000 miles away? They must have something going on between them. They are a perfect match. Dustless's forehead was filled with countless black lines, and the corner of his mouth was twitching. He stared at Garp with both anger and amusement. He wanted to refute, but he couldn't refute it. Although he knew that this was Garp's nonsense, it was indeed a coincidence that made people speechless. That old man might still be, seeing that Garp was still talking nonsense. Dustless simply turned around and left. The navy cloak behind him was also bulging. He was quite uncomfortable with this outfit. Although uncomfortable, he still chose to do as the Romans do. He always felt that in the name of justice, doing shady business was more suitable for him. Where is the next sailing route? Bigga's mom is already a drowning dog. Dustless stopped and looked straight at Garp. He was an honorary admiral and had no power. Of course, he was too lazy to take care of it. Everything fell on Garp's head. There is no need to pursue, Yonko, 4 emperors. The desperate beast is more ferocious than usual. If you can defeat her, you can just take back the islands occupied by her. Garp said in a depressed whisper, looking at the back of Bigga's mom. He clenched his fists. Even if he was unwilling, he couldn't help it. A skinny camel is bigger than a horse. What's more, there are Whitebeard pirates around. If they suddenly burst out and take a bite, the consequences would be unimaginable. Especially after the previous fight with the Whitebeard pirates, the Bigga's mom pirates were greatly damaged. At least in the next few years, she won't be able to make waves again. Do as you wish. Glancing faintly, Dustless knew that there was a deeper meaning. In addition, there is also the biggest factor. After destroying a Yonko, 4 emperors, not only will there be no benefits, but bad things will come out one after another. The islands ruled by Bigga's mom will first suffer, and pirates will begin to fight for territory and kill each other. The balance of the 3 major forces will also be broken, and the whole world will fall into a state of rage and loss of control. This old man said a lot. It's estimated that he doesn't have the confidence to kill Bigga's mom. This is interesting. Looking at the faintly unwilling Vice Admiral Garp, Dustless smiled, and at the same time, he was a little curious about Bigga's mom. There is no doubt that, Yonko, 4 emperors, are peerless powerhouses. Although Garp is strong enough, the other party is the elite of the entire Bigga's mom pirates. Maybe Roger, the Pirate King, will be defeated. Chapter 581. The black ink spots in the distance gradually disappeared from the sea forever. The encounter with the Bigga Mam pirates was just a small interlude in the middle. On the island once occupied by the Yonko, 4 emperors, the island affiliated with Bigga Mam, countless coffins rose from the ground, and the dead walked out with dull eyes and a smell of decay. These people were given life again, flexibly manipulating their limbs, slaughtering the remaining pirates on the island, and those never-before-seen ninjutsu were overwhelming. Water attribute, fire attribute, earth attribute, all kinds of stunning moves appeared on the stage. Killing and arson in the name of justice is much more interesting than leisurely Mariewa, doing nothing all day. With a strange smile on his cheeks, Dustless disappeared in an instant and turned into a golden beam of light, directly locking the pirates in front of him. Light speed kick. Boom boom boom, the moment the voice fell, the locked black shadow was hit by the golden light, and the super-large building in the distance disappeared together with it, turning into a pile of rubble. Even the trace of the corpse was not left. At the moment of the explosion, it had been annihilated into nothingness. What kind of ability does this guy have? It's almost the same as Kazara's fruit. After killing the attacking pirate, Garp's eyes fell on Dustless's calf with photon remnants. The moves and abilities used were almost the same. Even so, Garp didn't doubt that it was the same fruit. It was impossible for this to happen, it was just a division of similar abilities. In the same era, devil fruit with the same ability does not exist, this is known to the world. The whole scene was bloody and violent, there were charred limbs and broken arms everywhere, the ground was burned black by some kind of blazing force, and the screams were endless. Compared with the cold and ruthless Dustless, Garp was a person with a conscience. Those who could be captured alive were all captured alive, and those who dared to resist were just knocked out. On the other hand, Dustless's Kusanagi cloud sword condensed from photons cut iron like mud, and the pirates who were cut were all brutally dismembered. Executioners who commit crimes in the name of justice, stop immediately. An enraged voice came from behind, containing a monstrous killing intent that wished to tear Dustless to shreds. One could even hear the ear-piercing sound of teeth grinding due to excessive hatred. The pirates' brains don't seem to be very bright. They might be able to escape if they hide. Jumping out like a clown, do they think they are the saviors of the world? Sensationalism. Without even turning his head, Dustless's mocking voice resounded in the boundless void. Then, he disappeared from where he stood. Damn it, where did you go? The sound of astonishment exploded, and the pupils were full of dullness. The figure in front of them suddenly disappeared like a ghost, and the observation hockey couldn't perceive the location. It was hard not to be surprised. Boom, boom, boom. He suddenly felt a sharp pain in his back as an unprecedented power fell from the sky. His standing body was instantly crushed by this valiant and unparalleled power. The ground sank like a swamp as he was mercilessly trampled into the ground in an instant. Caw caw caw, the corner of his mouth vomited blood uncontrollably, and then he struggled desperately, but the small foot on his back was no different from a mountain weighing dozens of tons. No matter how fierce the resistance was, it couldn't splash a ripple, and no matter how powerful the force was, it couldn't shake the tender calf. Along with his dignity, it was trampled to nothing. His body was like a willow fluttering in the wind. This was the only thing that touched his mind. A strange emotion spread from the bottom of his heart. In an instant, he felt like a tiny grain of sand. No one would care if he died or not. In this way, do you still think you can save the world? Do you realize how fragile and powerless you are? Spitting out an indifferent accent that did not belong to a human, Wu Chen's emotionless gaze was like looking down at a powerless insect, his cold pupils splashed with faint ripples. Has the mastery of armament hockey reached a small achievement? You have some skills. The texture under his feet was no different from falling on steel, and there was an essential difference between it and the flexible back of human beings. Looking closely, Dustless suddenly felt that the struggling side of the face was familiar, and he seemed to have seen it before. Captain Thatch, we're coming to save you. Suddenly, there was a slight tremor on the ground. When he looked up, the scene reflected in his pupils was a dense group of pirates. They were holding all kinds of weapons, and they were charging towards him with a majestic momentum. Dustless's eyes narrowed slightly, and he looked at the dusty face. Perhaps because his left arm was broken, he didn't recognize Thatch's identity for a while. It turned out to be the Whitebeard Pirates' 4th Division captain. Thatch, no wonder you have this confidence. At this moment, Thatch was in a mess. His left arm had been torn, his eyes were full of filth, and even though his face was full of dust, it still couldn't hide his pale face. Since you are here, Marshal D. Titch, nicknamed Blackbeard, may also be on this island. With a cold face, Dustless looked straight at the pirates roaring in front of him. His pupils flashed with a rare pity, and the Kusanagi sword condensed from photons in his hand instantly collapsed. Ignorance is fearless, it's used to describe your group. The white jade-like hand condensed a large number of photons, like a bottomless black hole, frantically swallowing and absorbing the photons around, condensing into a dazzling flash. Yasekani no Magatama. Thousands of golden flashes flashed out, and the gorgeous light played a cruel scene. Dozens of pirates attacked, their bodies had hundreds of burn holes out of thin air, and they fell to the ground with an unwilling face. Although they were already dead, their great pupils were full of fear. Unlike Garp, Dustless only pursued two policies when dealing with enemies. The first was to completely control them, and the second was to completely destroy them. Chapter 582. Seeing that Dustless's methods were so bloody and cruel, as if the people he slaughtered were just a bunch of insignificant insects, Dustless's dark gem-like eyes remained calm. His whole body was filled with an aura of isolation. Serd couldn't help but feel at a loss. He didn't see the shadow of a human in Dustless. He didn't feel sad or happy about things. His clear eyes only had an unchanging indifference. Witnessing his former companions being brutally beaten into seeds, Surd's hatred for Dustless increased. In the blink of an eye, his whole face and neck turned red. He turned his head and glared at Dustless. His eyes were scarlet, like a dying beast. There was only soul-deep hatred in his eyes. Blackbeard. You mean Titch, right? Sorry to disappoint you. I've already asked him to meet up with my father in advance. Staring at Dustless with a sneer, Surd smiled proudly. He didn't hide the sarcasm in his words. It seemed that only in this way could his devastated heart feel better. Surd was sizing up Wu Qin without leaving a trace. He hoped to see his disappointment, but unfortunately, his wish was destined to fail. His face was always expressionless. He maintained an indifferent look. His frozen expression was indifferent. He was neither happy nor angry. His indifferent look had an invisible contempt for everything. You're the stupidest person in the world. You were betrayed by your own people, but you still helped him count the money and sacrificed your life to protect him. You're so considerate of others. I've lost. Dustless lowered his head and sighed. Surd's face turned pale and his breathing became heavy. He wanted to see Dustless's painful expression. He didn't want to see Dustless speak to him with such a pitiful look and a sympathetic tone. For a moment, he felt like a clown abandoned by the whole world. Quietly sizing up Surd at his feet, Dustless' tone didn't have any intention of ridicule. There was only pure sympathy. Surd was fooled by Blackbeard to the point of confusion and even protected him to the point of death. Dustless couldn't help but admire Blackbeard's methods. In the future, he was able to stabilize as one of the 4 emperors, obtain the dark fruit, and take away Whitebeard's tremor fruit. Whether it was accidental or inevitable, it proved that Blackbeard was extraordinary. A true wise man did not rely on absolute strength to conquer the world and control the world behind the scenes. Instead, he used his weak strength to make the entire world go round and round. Countless experts were at his fingertips, playing their roles according to the script he had arranged in advance. Only then could he be called a wise man. Blackbeard is such a person. Although his strength is not as good as Bigumamu and Whitebeard for the time being, he can provoke a war between the 2 pirate regiments with his wisdom. The same was true during the War of the Best in later generations. The real winner was not the Marine headquarters that suffered heavy losses, nor the Whitebeard pirates that Whitebeard died, but Blackbeard who gained both fame and fortune. You still don't understand. You are just a clown being played by Blackbeard. All of this is a drama directed and written by him. His goal is to provoke a war between Whitebeard and Bigu's mom and take the opportunity to seize the dark fruit. Dustless' magnetic voice was full of wisdom as he said faintly. The onlooker sees everything clearly. It was precisely because he was not involved that he could take a more rational approach and pry into the secrets behind the scenes. Nonsense, Titch is easygoing, he can't be the kind of person you said. He has been in the Whitebeard pirates for more than 10 years, don't tell me his purpose is the so-called dark fruit. Surd screamed hysterically, denying everything Dustless said. Why deceive yourself? If Blackbeard didn't instigate you to secretly steal the dark fruit, none of this would have happened, Dustless explained softly. There was only simple pity and sympathy in his tone. He sympathized with Surd's ignorance and ridiculous ideas, his narrow vision, and his ignorance of people's hearts. The most ridiculous thing is that Surd still defended Blackbeard even after being cheated by him. This kind of tragic character also made Dustless's dusty heart loosen. He wanted to ridicule Surd, but he couldn't. In short, Dustless lost to such a strange character. Dustless's ridicule is at least a person like Whitebeard. Surd is not qualified. You can go. Dustless glanced at him faintly, and his eyes flashed with a strange light. The golden calf that stepped on Surd's body was also taken back, leaving Surd with a stunned face. Bastard, I don't even have the qualifications to be killed by you, right? Standing up and glaring at Dustless, Serd roared furiously. The burning flames burned his reason. If he didn't realize the huge gap between them, he would definitely kill Dustless at all costs. However, even if he fought with his life, he still couldn't shake Wu Qin. Wu Qin was so close, yet it was like the ends of the earth. His hands simply couldn't touch Wu Qin, and it was also impossible to touch his shadow. Do you think you are qualified? Dustless turned his head, revealing half of his face, and asked. She breathed out cold air and glanced at him expressionlessly. Her cold eyes were as quiet as stagnant water at the bottom of a beach. She glanced at him deeply and then strolled away. Her leisurely pace was like a stroll after dinner. About half an hour later, Dustless came to the marine battleship. You are cruel enough. He has been driven crazy by you. You killed him with your own hands. You let him go on purpose. Garp said helplessly as he leaned against the marine battleship on the coast. He stared at the indifferent Dustless, his mouth moved, but he still closed his mouth. Dustless's strength is not weaker than his, and his military rank is higher than his. He is also a supreme celestial dragon, and his forces are all over the world. It's not Garp's turn to say anything. Cruel. I feel that this is a different kind of release. It's also a way to make use of trash and squeeze out his last bit of value. It's to let Serd recognize reality and walk towards heaven without regrets. I feel that I'm very kind, Lieutenant General Garp. Happy Mid-Autumn Festival, everyone. Chapter 583. When Black Death said this, Dustless was curious, and his eyes were filled with surprise. Does this guy still have a strong move? The time was a little strange, but then he felt a familiar aura, which made him frown. His eyes narrowed slightly, and he took a deep breath. He was even more curious. At this moment, Black Death put his hand on the hilt, and at the same time, took a deep breath, and the extremely curved sword was instantly unsheathed. In the blink of an eye, a ray of cold light shot towards Wu Qin. At this time, after seeing the biting cold light, Dustless couldn't help but be startled, but then he coldly snorted, and suddenly jumped up. Taking a deep breath, a cold murderous aura appeared in his eyes. In that instant, a ray of light shot out. Immediately, an azure saber energy flew out from his body and collided with the saber energy. Everyone's eyes were filled with surprise. At this time, Dustless didn't have the intention to be polite at all, and he instantly opened the Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. At this time, his body was covered with a blue light, and that was Kansusanu. He coldly snorted, and slowly looked at the person in front of him and said, "Just by you. Although your strength isn't bad, it doesn't seem to be enough. Why don't you try another move?" At this moment, Black Death's face was filled with anger, and he coldly said, "Is that so? Let's try this." Kansusanu was only in a half-body state. It didn't directly enter the final state. Black Death Mao was not polite at all. He coldly jumped up, and his speed was incomparably fast. He immediately drew a terrifying ray of light with his extremely curved saber, jumped into the air, and his body slightly rotated. Then, he suddenly slashed down with all his might. Dustless saw the sword coming towards him, but he didn't move, and just stood there, and at the same time, he immediately raised the shield in his hand. The moment Kansusanu raised the shield, it directly blocked all the dark energy on the sword, and all the dark energy was completely blocked in an instant. Dustless's expression became colder, and his eyes showed a bit of disdain, and he said with a faint sneer, "This kind of power can't do anything to me. It seems that you've reached the end, right?" When he said this, there was a hint of mockery in his voice. At this moment, after hearing this sentence, Black Death immediately became angrier, and he took a deep breath, and his eyes slightly narrowed. "You? What did you say?" Just as he said this, Wu Chen flew back, and at the same time, he suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. Fire release, grand fire annihilation. A huge flame suddenly spewed out from his mouth, and when the terrifying flame sprayed out from his mouth, it directly hit the opponent in front of him. Mao Black Death was shocked when he saw the incomparably huge flame spraying towards him. He sucked in a breath of cold air. The temperature of the flame made him shudder. It was a world of difference from before. Just now, it was only 1,000 degrees, but now, it had turned white. The pure white flame has reached more than 10,000 degrees. At this time, he couldn't help but be shocked, but at this moment, he made up his mind, clenched his teeth, snorted coldly, and held the sword with both hands, and roared loudly, "Absolutely. I won't lose to you." After he finished speaking, he suddenly slashed down with his sword. Instantly, the huge white fireball was cut in half. At the same time, the entire fireball roared and exploded with a thunderous sound. In an instant, a lot of sand and stones were burned into glass. At this time, Dustless's face showed a smile, and then he slapped the ground, and said indifferently, "You're very interesting, I want that sword in your hand, I want to study it." Lightning release, earth walk. As soon as he finished speaking, a shocking thunder and lightning spurted out from his hand, and directly walked on the ground, like a snake, rushing towards Black Death in front of him in an instant. Black Death was instantly electrocuted by the thunder and lightning, and his whole body was numb. In an instant, he half knelt down, and forced himself to stand up with the help of the sword, and gritted his teeth. Just as he was about to rush forward again, he saw the energy rising from Dustless's body, and at the same time, under the surprised eyes of everyone, a giant appeared. Dustless also transformed into his ultimate form. In an instant, as if the real god of thunder had descended, a huge Japanese god of thunder appeared in front of everyone, and they couldn't help but exclaim in amazement. Dustless looked at all of this coldly, snorted, and indifferently opened his huge wings, lowered his head proudly, and said, "What, you still want to resist? Although your sword is strong, it's nothing compared to mine." At this point, Black Death's words immediately stabbed his heart. Black Death became even angrier, and gritted his teeth. Although he maintained his human form, there was already a change inside. His body was filled with dark energy, and suddenly, a cracking sound came from his body. He shouted loudly, "I will never lose to you bastards, I will never lose again." After he finished speaking, his eyes turned red and purple, and at the same time, a burst of energy rushed straight into the sky, and the terrifying power suddenly shocked everyone. Dustless's body erupted with the power of the ten-tailed beast. After all, there is a lot of power hidden in his body. More importantly, he even has the power of Akinoroja. The powerful power of Akinoroja and the ten-tailed beast shocked everyone present, and no one dared to act rashly at this time. Even Black Death, who burst out with amazing energy, was the same. When Mao Black Death felt the terrifying power, the blade in his hand fell to the ground. The dark energy on his body also dissipated at this time. He was stunned. Looking at the incomparably huge godlike power in front of him, he couldn't help but be stunned speechless. Dustless didn't hold back, and suddenly raised the Totsuka sword in his hand, and suddenly slashed down. The moment the sword slashed down, Black Death's head was directly sent flying. At the same time, the dark energy on the strange sword was also absorbed into the gourd. Black Death's soul slowly floated up at this time, and his eyes revealed a sense of helplessness. So this is what death feels like. The death that he had been afraid of was actually so easy. It's all over. The more he thought about it, the more surprised he became. Why would such power fall into their hands? This shouldn't be the case. Could it be that those stones, he suddenly remembered the stones left behind after the Rashomon was shattered. Could it be that they passed through there? Because the Rashomon was summoned by him, it contained his own power. The Rashomon was a place where evil spirits gathered, so there were many vengeful spirits and evil spirits. At this moment, Dustless understood. After coming over, he narrowed his eyes slightly and took a deep breath. At this moment, Tanjilong, who was beside him, seemed to have noticed what he was thinking about. He said strangely, "Dustless, are you thinking about something strange? I keep feeling that you have a lot on your mind." After Dustless heard this, he smiled bitterly with a little hopelessness. He sighed and said, "It should be something that I can't help. Sigh, there's nothing I can do about it." Just as he said this, Tanjilong was very puzzled and said, "Aw. If that's the case, then what is it?" Dustless said at this moment, "No misery, it's about that guy's power. That guy's power is actually very close. It's a very taboo power in my hometown. It's a very terrifying power. Under normal circumstances, very few people would use that kind of power. I don't know where he got it from." Just as he said this, Tanjilong was suddenly stunned. He blinked his eyes in surprise and said in astonishment, "It can't be." Dustless smiled bitterly and scratched his head. "His body contains that kind of power. I can feel it." So, Tanjilong narrowed his eyes slightly and took a deep breath. He said with a slightly strange feeling, "Aw. So it's like that. That's really strange. In the past, I heard people say that no misery seemed to have become like that because of some kind of drug. But after hearing what you said, it seems that things aren't quite the same." Just as he said this, Dustless smiled bitterly and said, "Actually, I'm not very clear about this. I only know." Speaking up to this point, his eyes became sharp. He stood up and said, "Maybe there's some connection. But now, we still have to find him. Otherwise, we won't be able to confirm this matter. We have to quickly get rid of that bastard." Speaking up to this point, his eyes became even sharper. He coldly snorted and took a deep breath. He wanted to quickly get rid of that bastard. He didn't want to feel that kind of power again. At the same time, the power of resentment might play a strange role in this world. This was something he really didn't want. He didn't want to let others use his power to do bad things. Last time, he let Nero take control of a part of it. It was already very dangerous. If something happened this time, it would be very troublesome. He thought this in his heart. After hearing his words, everyone was stunned for a moment, then they all nodded. Soon, everyone arrived at the small path. However, they heard a voice. "This time, we will definitely be able to eliminate no misery. As long as the time is right, we can directly enter Limitless City." "That's right. That's right." After Dustless and the others heard this, they felt a little excited. They hurriedly walked into the courtyard and saw that everyone was already there. Dustless and the others had just returned. Everyone immediately turned their heads to look at them. Chapter 585. The old address of the Bladesmith village was shrouded in smoke. At this time, a gloomy man in a suit appeared here. His eyes became colder and colder. He looked at the ruins coldly and felt the energy in it. He couldn't help but have a complicated expression as he clenched his teeth. Dancing Ghost Ming Wuxia came here, but this time, it wasn't for a mission, nor was it to kill the Ghost Killer team. It was because he felt that his subordinates had died here. At the same time, he also felt that a force close to him had died here. At this moment, after he came here, he suddenly understood that his former hometown, the person who was out of his control, Black Death Mao, Jigui Yanxing, is dead. At the same time, 2 of his subordinates had died here, and there wasn't even a corpse left. What was left was obviously completely dissipated. It was impossible for them to be resurrected. This made his expression extremely gloomy, and his eyes revealed a thick murderous intent. He clenched his teeth and looked at the gloomy weather. His expression became colder and colder. Although he could walk under the sun now, he wasn't satisfied with just walking under the sun. What he wanted to do was to make the whole world fall into darkness. Now that he had directly lost an ally and 2 subordinates, he was extremely angry. He clenched his teeth and took a deep breath. His eyes revealed a thick anger as he said, "Dustless." Just as he said this, a voice sounded in his ear, I didn't expect my brother to die so soon. What a pity." Dancing Ghost Ming Wuxia wasn't surprised after hearing the voice. Instead, he muttered to himself, "You have to be careful too. If I die, you will die too." Dancing Ghost Ming Wuxia knew who was talking in his body. It was the guardian ghost of Luoxing Men. Luoxing Men had a total of 3 guardian ghosts, and now, one of them had died. There was one in Dancing Ghost Ming Wuxia's body. And the other one was completely materialized. If for some special reason, his power hadn't fully recovered, so he hadn't appeared. The elder brother, the ghost of Rashomon, said coldly, "You can try. I've given you power, so you must fulfill your promise. This is the entire content of our deal. You must fulfill it. I've already given you power." Ghost dancer Ming Wuxia was cold. He narrowed his eyes and said, "I know what you mean. This time, I will kill everyone in the Ghost Killer team. At the same time, I will create a world like yours. Because that is what I want too." His murderous aura surged as he spoke. This time, he had already set up the best trap. It was much better than the last time. This time, he would make all the members of the Ghost Killer team fall into the trap. He would have a chance to kill all of them in one fell swoop. By then, no one would be able to stop his hegemony. He would become the king of the dark world. At this moment, in the headquarters of the Ghost Killers. After listening to the plan, Dustless had some doubts. He frowned and asked curiously, "How did you come up with this plan? Why do I feel that it's a little unreliable? It doesn't seem that easy to kill him. How did you find the entrance to his final nest so quickly?" Just as he said this, Undying Gawa immediately said, "We've already investigated it. There is an entrance not far from the entrance of a cave. If we enter, we can directly find that bastard and kill him." At that time, Dustless interrupted, "Don't be so naive. That guy will definitely have defenses. Also, where did you get the information this time? What's going on?" Just as he said this, everyone was stunned for a moment. Then, they heard Tomioka Yoshihide say, "The information came from a member before he died, so we have reason to believe that it's true. Of course, I also think that it's true because our members have no reason to lie to us. Also, we sent people to verify that there is an entrance there, but we don't know if it's the entrance to Limitless City." After hearing this, Dustless touched his chin and took a deep breath. He narrowed his eyes and said, "If that's the case, then let me go with you. Maybe it will be useful. If only a few of you go, then it's completely unreliable. Let's go together. After all, I also want to kill him." After hearing this, Yoshihide Fuji said, "But you haven't recovered yet. You just went through a battle. If you go with us, then wouldn't it be?" After hearing this, Dustless smiled and said indifferently, "Don't worry, I'm fine. I'm just afraid that you won't be able to cooperate with me. If possible, let's go together." Lamenting Yu Xingming nodded and said, "If that's the case, then let's go together." Everyone was full of confidence when they heard this. At this moment, Dustless felt that something was wrong. He frowned slightly and took a deep breath. He couldn't help but think, those guys must have arranged something in that city. However, as long as he was there, nothing major would happen. At most, there would be some twists and turns. He could definitely eliminate that bastard, even if he wanted to catch a turtle in a jar. Dustless also knew that as long as he was there, no one else would be able to do this move, because with his strength, he wouldn't let anyone die there, and he would definitely be able to kill all the ghosts inside. At this moment, Limitless City. Looking at the newly created subordinates in front of him, Wraith Dancer became even colder. He had lost many of his subordinates during the first quarter moon. The only one left in front of him was the newly appointed Song Nu, Niu. Only the older generation of the first quarter moon was left. Tong Mo, Tai Lang, and Zuiji. This kind of faction was a bit embarrassing and unpleasant. Although their strength had increased a lot, it was inevitable that there would be accidents. Chapter 586. 3 days later, Dustless led the group to the entrance of the city. It was a narrow cave, but they could feel a special energy bursting out from it. The corners of his mouth curled into a smile. If there was spatial energy, then things would be easier. With that thought in mind, he calmly said, "Everyone, if you split into small groups, you must be careful. Don't act rashly. We must find Wu Ku, who is hiding in the city. Don't let your emotions get the better of you." Everyone immediately nodded in agreement. This time, there were many people who followed them, but there were also some who stayed behind to guard the headquarters. Those who stayed behind to guard the headquarters were lamenting Yu Xingming, Purgatory Shenshou Lang, Scale Dragons Wu Jin Ji, Time Tu Lang, and Yusi Tianyuan. As for the others, they would attack Limitless City. There were still many important items and important people in the headquarters, so they had to leave some people behind to protect them. However, with or without them, their hearts calmed down a lot. This time, the attack would definitely succeed. Dustless quickly led the group and directly stepped into the space. As soon as they entered, they directly walked into a strange space. Various rooms floated in it, giving people a strange feeling. Dustless felt that the space was chaotic, and energy was unceasingly flowing in it. He coldly snorted and slightly narrowed his eyes. He took a deep breath and suddenly widened his eyes, turning them into the whites of his eyes. In an instant, he directly saw a wave of energy moving. It was the energy that belonged to his own body. With a cold snort, he turned around to look at the group and said, "Everyone, you must be careful. I have already found the target. I will chase after him first. You must be careful." After he finished speaking, he immediately jumped up and rushed forward. His speed was so fast that people couldn't help but jump in fright. After he left, Medusi looked around and blinked. At this moment, she felt the floor move. She took a deep breath and suddenly punched the floor, causing everyone to jump in fright. The floor was directly smashed open, and at the same time, a ghost jumped out from it. Medusi was incomparably fast as she retreated backwards. At this moment, the ghost that came out from the crack was none other than the prostitute Taro, who had obtained a new power. A cold murderous look appeared on his face. Behind the crowd, a woman's laughter could be heard. "You're all dead. How dare you barge in here? My lord said that he would capture all of you here and kill all of you." As soon as she finished speaking, everyone turned around and saw an extremely beautiful female ghost. At the same time, she was wearing a gorgeous dress and exuded a cold murderous aura. She looked at everyone with disdain. Purgatory Xing Shou Lang quickly pulled out his saber and instantly entered the second form. At the same time, his eyes became ferocious. Flames ignited on his saber as he looked at everyone and said, "Let's begin." When the crowd heard this, they immediately agreed and nodded their heads. Every one of them revealed a cold killing intent. The killing intent floated up and directly targeted the two ghosts in front of them. Purgatory Xing Shou Lang's eyes suddenly widened as he charged at the prostitute Taro in front of him. Harlot Taro, I was afraid of that crazy broadsword. Instead, he raised the hook in his hand to block it. The hook in his hand blocked the saber. However, immediately after, a powerful flame energy gushed out and pressed down on him. He couldn't help but jump in fright. Meduzi didn't have any reason to be polite. She suddenly jumped up and clenched her fists. Huge waves of water surged out of them. She shouted loudly, "You bastard, go die for me. Flood dragon." As her voice fell, she clenched her fists and punched at Taro. Dr. Taro took a step back and jumped onto another building. The building on the roof was drifting away. He clenched his teeth and took a deep breath. He quickly swung his hook, and his hook instantly turned into countless hooks. At the same time, blood-red hooks appeared and surrounded everyone. However, at this moment, a voice rang out. "Breath of the Beast, complete set." As soon as the words left his mouth, he saw two huge swords slashing toward Taro the needle prostitute. The wild fighting style, the two sabers with sharp teeth, and the appearance of a pig head made people feel that it was a little funny. However, that saber slash was solid. With a crack, it cut through the bones. The brothel owner, Turong Jia, was struck in the shoulder by the saber. Half of his body was chopped off. He sucked in a breath of cold air and quickly jumped into another house. At this moment, the powerful force that accompanied the fall of the saber instantly destroyed the house that he had just occupied. After destroying the room, Inosuke felt that he couldn't stand steadily. He suddenly jumped back to his original platform. She coldly sighed, looking with a bit of disappointment at the prostitute Taro who was standing on top of a floating house not too far away. She said, "This fellow is really boring, he can't handle it at all." Just as he said this, Taro clenched his teeth and felt his scalp go numb. This guy's strength really couldn't be underestimated. As he thought of this, his eyes were filled with shock. He clenched his teeth tightly. For a moment, there were some things that he didn't want to believe. However, in reality, he really couldn't win against this guy. At this moment, Inosuke, who was standing on the ground, didn't react. He felt a huge sense of weightlessness. Only then did the crowd react. A feeling of weightlessness came from beneath their feet. With a loud cry, the crowd dissipated and fell to different places. Taro heaved a sigh of relief. He and his sister were used as bait to lure them deeper. Therefore, at this time, they had to directly lead them in. Otherwise, they wouldn't have appeared here. Seeing her brother injured, fallen concubine quickly came forward and said, "Brother, are you okay?" The prostitute, Taro, shook his head and said with a bitter smile, "I really wish that woman could move faster. Otherwise, I'd be dead for sure. That fellow's blade is truly sharp. Furthermore, there are so many people here. For the two of us to be the bait, it is indeed a bit." Just as he said this, they heard a cold voice, "What are you whispering about? Why aren't you chasing after them?" The voice that came from the bottom of their hearts immediately made them shudder. The two siblings quickly chased after the direction where everyone fell. Chapter 587. Ishinusuke blinked his eyes and looked around. When he went there, he only saw a lotus pond in front of him. At the same time, he was surrounded by a square. He stood up blankly and felt strange. He always felt that something was wrong with him. He touched the back of his head and was very surprised. And at this time, he heard a voice, "Ishinusuke." Ishinusuke turned his head and looked over. It was a woman wearing a butterfly robe. Butterfly Ninja. At this moment, the Butterfly Ninja anxiously ran to his side and said, "Did you fall here too? Where is this place? It seems like there is a special seal here." Just as he said this, Ishinosuk's nose twitched, and his eyes revealed a bit of doubt. He took a deep breath and looked forward. Suddenly, he was stunned. He saw a very beautiful man in front of him. Butterfly Ninja turned his head and looked over. In an instant, his eyes were filled with hatred. He couldn't help but widen his eyes and take a deep breath. The power of hatred surged. Because what appeared in front of them was incomparably beautiful, but at the same time, completely without a trace of human emotion, Tong Imo. There was a faint smile on Tong Mo's face. He looked at the two people in front of him and said, "Your eyes seem to know each other, but I don't seem to know you." Butterfly Ninja noticed that the man in front of him didn't have a smile on his face. He just wanted to smile. Then he said faintly, "I can see who you are. You are the person who killed my sister, Tong Imo." After hearing this, Tong Imo couldn't help but be stunned for a moment. There was a bit of surprise in his eyes. He looked at the girl in front of him and said with a smile on his face, "So you are that woman's sister." It was really interesting at that time, but unfortunately, "I didn't eat you." Although his face was full of smiles, he didn't have much intention to smile. He just wanted to smile. And at this time, Ishinosuk took a deep breath and nodded, "Call me a ghost." There is such a strong ghost aura on his body, and there is a strong smell of blood. It seems that he has eaten a lot of people. I have to kill him. After hearing this, Butterfly Ninja couldn't help but be stunned. This guy's reaction was really slow. Obviously, this was a ghost. At this time, Ishinosuk directly threw the pig head on his head on the ground and took a deep breath, revealing a beautiful face like a girl. Butterfly Ninja was stunned for a moment. Didn't this guy refuse to take off the pig head? How come now? Tong Mo took off the mask in front of him and said very strangely, "I remember, you are that woman's son." Ishinosuk took a deep breath at this time, shook his head, and said strangely, "Although I don't know who you are talking about, I know that you should be a very familiar person to me, but you are a ghost, so let's kill you first." Just as he finished speaking, he abruptly pulled out his two blades and placed them in front of him. What kind of power was this? This caused his scalp to involuntarily turn numb. His eyes were filled with terror as he involuntarily jumped in fright. What's wrong with these two guys? It shouldn't be, with this kind of strength, how can they become so strong? Why is it like this? The more he thought about it, the more fear he felt. Chapter 588. Without any hesitation, Ishinosuk once again released an even more astonishing power. At this time, the dual blades became even wilder, and at the same time, the energy in his body skyrocketed. At this time, Ishinosuk had completely entered the second state, and at the same time, the strength of his body increased by a lot. His eyes turned red and purple. He picked up the two wild-fanged blades and slashed towards Tong Mo in front of him. Tong Mo saw the two wild-fanged blades slashing towards him. Tong Mo's eyes were filled with shock. Blood ghost art creeping lotus. The icy white fog formed vines one after another, and directly rushed towards Ishinosuk who was attacking in front of him. The energy in Ishinosuk's body was very terrifying, although he didn't have any attack skills. However, it was incomparably terrifying. A thunderous rumble immediately sounded out as the blades smashed down, creating a huge hole in the ground. This caused the surrounding area to tremble. The powerful and terrifying strength caused Tong Mo's scalp to involuntarily turn numb. In an instant, he hurriedly retreated dozens of meters away. His eyes were full of surprise, and he was shocked, and he clenched his teeth. This guy's strength is very fast, how can it be so exaggerated? Insect's breath, butterfly's dance tease. At this time, the butterfly ninja suddenly jumped up, and the blade in his hand that had become incomparably wild slashed 5 times in a row, and suddenly, 5 blade auras were released from 5 directions, directly slashing down. When Tong Mo heard 5 rays of light flying towards him, he was shocked, but then he saw the golden fan in his hand completely spread out at this time, and at this time, he quickly waved the fan in his hand, and said with a disdainful sneer, "Only this strength? Blood ghost art, withered garden falling snow." When Tong Mo's words fell, a golden fan appeared in both of his hands, and at the same time, he waved it, and suddenly, the 5 blade auras were completely dissipated in an instant. There was a slight hint of ridicule in his eyes, and although it was a little difficult, he still didn't lose some of his elegance. He said coldly, "This kind of strength is really not enough." As soon as he said that, the butterfly was infuriated. She took a deep breath while holding the saber in one hand. Her eyes suddenly widened, and the immortal energy in her body became even more vigorous. He said coldly, "You damned bastard, you don't have the slightest smell of living on your body." Just as he said this, a faint smile appeared on Tong Mo's face. He shook his head and said, "Who is the one to decide who should live and who should die? My body is filled with a smell that you humans don't like, but your bodies are filled with a smell that I like." As he spoke, a faint smile appeared on his face. And at this moment, after hearing these words, the butterfly ninja became even more impolite. He had been training for a long time. This time, he came to avenge his sister, so he definitely wouldn't be polite. Insect's breath, bee's tooth dance, Xin Yi. He abruptly made a move and leaped into the air. A pair of butterfly-like wings sprouted from his back and flapped them in an instant. At the same time, an incomparably sharp light appeared on his saber. He directly made a move towards Tong Mo. When Tong Mo saw the saber coming towards him, a look of disdain appeared on his face. He shook his head and sighed, "So what if I let you stab me? Your saber can't hurt me at all, come and try." Blood demon art, scattering lotus. He immediately used a powerful move. The fan in his hand suddenly slashed down like a saber. Instantly, a saber aura accompanied by countless sharp ice shards rushed towards the butterfly ninja in front of him. The butterfly ninja was filled with determination. How could he be afraid at this moment? Facing the saber aura, he only snorted coldly and stabbed his saber. In an instant, the saber broke through the ice shards with a loud boom. In an instant, Tong Mo reacted and quickly condensed a block of ice in front of him. He flew back and jumped to the side of the lotus pond. With a bitter laugh, the ice shards immediately exploded. Tong Mo's eyes were filled with surprise. He couldn't help but say in amazement, "Compared to your sister, you have improved a little. Your sister doesn't have much strength and insisted on using her saber to chop off my head. You are very different. Your stab is very effective." When he finished speaking, the butterfly ninja immediately swung his saber. In an instant, a biting cold light flashed. He took a deep breath and narrowed his eyes slightly. He said, "Is that so?" Just as he said that, he heard a voice ring out. Beast's breath, Type 8, explosive advance. Mohei Ishinasuk's voice rang out. He suddenly increased his speed. In an instant, his speed reached the limit. In an instant, with a boom, he appeared beside Tong Mo. Tong Mo immediately gripped his fan tightly with both hands. However, before he could react, he saw 2 ridiculously huge fanged sabers smashing down on his head. He couldn't help but jump in fright. However, he quickly waved his fan like a saber and 2 huge icicles appeared in an instant. After the fanged broadsword hit the icicle was instantly shattered. Tong Mo flew up and quickly jumped into the lotus pond sculpture. He couldn't help but breathe. He was a little nervous. This guy is a little difficult to deal with. He just thought. Beast's breath, Joe's teeth stretch snake crack. When the voice rang out, the two people were shocked. Mohea's Shinasuk directly lengthened, or it could be said that he became even bigger. At the same time, his hands instantly became like a snake holding two sabers. He directly rushed towards the huge sculpture. His speed was incomparably fast. Suddenly, the sculpture was slashed apart by the thunder god. Tong Moshi, who was standing on top of the sculpture, was stunned. He suddenly jumped into the sky, and at the same time, waved his two fans. He softly chanted, "Blood Demon Art, Spreading Lotus." When he said that, he successfully cast the art. In an instant, countless ice crystals slowly flew towards Mohea's Shinasuk behind him and attacked. At this time, Mohea's Shinasuk only showed a disdainful expression. He swung his sabers and shouted loudly, "Beast's breath, Joe's teeth-spinning teeth." Suddenly, the two sabers rotated, and all the attacks were dissolved. He turned around and slashed. Chapter 589. Tong Mo was a little surprised and immediately turned around. At the same time, the two swords were blocked by his fan, but he was also sent flying more than 10 meters away. Saito's Shinasuk has been in 3 states for a long time, so he was a little tired. But soon, he gritted his teeth and said, "I'll fight for a chance, I'll kill him with one slash." Hearing this, Tong Mo nodded. The butterfly ninja grunted and nodded. Then, he took a deep breath and jumped up. The saber in his hand spun and opened up. Insect's breath, fly's dance, compound eye hexagon. The butterfly ninja didn't hold back, and in an instant, his wings grew again. The sword in his hand stabbed towards the enemy in front of him. Tong Mo saw the butterfly ninja stabbing towards him, and his face was a little confused. Is this guy stupid? How can he attack? Just as he was thinking this, he couldn't help but be stunned. The one in front of him suddenly turned into 6 people, and at the same time, they attacked from 6 different directions. When Tong Mo heard this scene, he couldn't help but be stunned for a moment. Then, he laughed very excitedly, and with both hands holding the fan, he said excitedly, "Interesting, this is fun. Woman, you're quite interesting, I didn't expect you to be able to display such strength. Since you have such an interesting move, I'll use an even more interesting move to respond." The moment he stabilized his horse stance, the wide and beautiful robe on his body was stretched open, and he suddenly shouted, "Blood Demon Art, Frozen Cloud." Suddenly, the power that was displayed directly swept over, and the 6 people were directly frozen. What's more, the 6 people were directly shattered in an instant. At this time, his face showed a cold smile, and slowly put away the fan, and took 2 or 3 steps back. Looking at the slowly falling ice crystals, there was a slight disdain on his face. At this time, he couldn't help but twitch his nose, and suddenly, he was stunned. In an instant, his face was stunned, and his eyes were full of surprise, and he sucked in a breath of cold air. He directly knelt down, gritted his teeth, and stepped back again. His eyes narrowed slightly. The fear of death came again, and this made his scalp numb. This is such a familiar smell, and such a concentrated smell. The butterfly ninja swung his blade out of the icy white mist and walked out. He said in an elegant voice, "It's a poison that has been concentrated 700 times. The poison of wisteria. At the same time, this poison will only work on you ghosts because I have made a special modification. More importantly, this poison no longer has a color like before. I specially changed it to be colorless and odorless. Only when it enters your body will you be able to smell the Chinese wisteria gas drifting in the air." When he said this, Tong Mo was already starting to feel the strain on his body. He forced himself to his feet and retreated a dozen steps. Then, he coughed out a mouthful of blood. This was a type of poison. Tong Imo suddenly felt that something was amiss. He had thrown out so many ice crystals, but they were completely ineffective. Could it be that these two didn't need to breathe? Something was wrong. With this thought in mind, he narrowed his eyes and took a deep breath. He clenched his fists and gritted his teeth, shouting, "I will never lose to you two idiots." Blood Ghost Art, Fierce Cold Baiji. After he finished speaking, he slapped his hands on the ground and a huge ice statue appeared. The ice statue appeared in front of the two. At the same time, the butterfly ninja couldn't help but jump in fright. However, he quickly retreated backward. The ice sculpture was a beautiful woman. The woman opened her mouth and countless poisonous gas floated out. In an instant, the gas rushed towards the two of them. The poisonous gas was accompanied by ice. If it entered the two's body, they would die instantly. However, this was only Tong Mo's guess. Something unexpected happened. Within the icy white fog, the two of them were just standing there in a very light manner. Mouthy Ishinosuk had been preparing all this time. His eyes narrowed, and the two fanged blades in his hands were stabbed into the ground beside him. He didn't move, he just stood there. He didn't want to waste any more time. He wanted to finish off this terrifying man-eating ghost in front of him in one blow. At this time, Baiji finally attacked. In an instant, she raised her hand and attacked the two. The butterfly ninja wasn't the same. The woman who used to be weak when holding a blade coldly snorted and waved the blade in her hand. She took a deep breath and slashed out. Insect's breath, dance of the butterfly, tease. It was merely a single slash, but it possessed an immense destructive power. In an instant, it caused the ice statue in front of him to shatter. The terrifying power caused Tong Mo to involuntarily jump in fright. Tong Mo frowned slightly. After being startled, he jumped up in surprise and coldly snorted, "I will definitely not lose to you guys." After saying that, he took a deep breath. Energy surged in his body and he shouted, "Blood Ghost Art, Winter Ice Pillar." They jumped directly into the air. At the same time, countless ice condensed in an instant, condensing into a white cloud above their heads. Tong Mo jumped behind the two of them and said coldly, "Die in the ice." "I'm already angry. I don't want to play with you brats anymore." After saying that, he slowly put away his fan, thinking that the matter was over. Then, he heard a cold voice appear. "If you think that it's over, then you're too naive. Seventh Gate of Wonder, open." The moment the voice fell, Ishinosuk had already turned on a powerful energy switch in an instant. In an instant, transparent blood vessels immediately appeared on his body. At the same time, he suddenly turned around and slashed with his sword. The ice was about to fall. At that moment, the high energy soared into the sky, breaking all the clouds in an instant. The incomparably terrifying power had destroyed all the clouds in an instant. The blood ghost tree had also been completely dispelled in an instant. Mouthy Ishinosuk was only accumulating energy. He didn't use up all his energy. Chapter 590. When Tong Mo saw this, he couldn't help but jump in fright. The butterfly ninja seized the opportunity and jumped up with incredible speed. At the same time, he flapped his wings and the blade in his hand instantly turned into a slender sword. Insect's breath, centipede's dance, 100 feet, snake belly. The moment the voice fell, the butterfly ninja flew out. The butterfly ninja had already rushed out. The thin arrow in his hand was as thin as a toothpick. He quickly attacked. Tong Mo didn't have time to see clearly, but he discovered that there were hundreds of wounds on his body. He couldn't help but jump in fright and quickly retreated. In half a second, there were hundreds of holes on his body. But soon, with the ghost's regenerative ability, he quickly returned to his original state. His face revealed a disdainful sneer as he rolled his eyes and said, "So that's it? You're just tickling me." When he said this, there was a hint of mockery in his voice. The butterfly ninja slowly retracted his blade and returned to his normal state. He lightly said, "Ishizuka, the rest is up to you." After Ishizuka heard this, he nodded, and his speed began to speed up. Beast's Breath, 18th Explosive Advance. His speed was extremely fast, close to the speed of light. In an instant, there was a loud bang as he hit Tong Mo. Tong Mo didn't have time to see clearly and his entire body was sent flying into the air. At the same time, he stabilized his body in the air. But at this moment, immediately, a violent gust of wind came from behind him. When he heard the sound, he immediately turned around to attack. But just as he was about to attack, his hand fell to the ground. He was stunned. Beast's Breath, second Fong, slash. When the voice rang in his ears, he discovered that his right hand was also broken. Ishizuka's speed was more than 10 times faster than before. The blade in his hand was constantly waving and cutting off both of Tong Mo's hands. Then, he suddenly slammed his head down and knocked Tong Mo to the ground. Tong Mo heaved a sigh of relief as he hastily turned around and ran. His face was filled with terror, and the fear of death caused his scalp to turn numb. Tong Mo clenched his teeth tightly and his hands quickly grew back. He quickly took out a fan and shouted, "I won't die, you damn bastards. Blood Demon Art Crystallization Yuko." The moment he landed, he waved the fan in his hand. Immediately, the energy in his body surged. In an instant, an exact copy of himself appeared in front of him. It was the clone that he had created. In an instant, Zhong immediately rushed out. The fan in his hand was as sharp as a knife. In an instant, he directly slashed at Zuihei Ishizuka. Ishizuka just snorted in disdain. With a slash, a loud sound came out. Beast's Breath, 3 fangs, Fong Tier. That powerful force instantly tore the clone into pieces. When Ishizuka landed on the ground, Tong Mo was already a dozen meters away from him. At the same time, his eyes widened as he clapped his hands together and roared, "Who would lose to you?" Blood Ghost Spell, Mist Ice Water Lotus Bodhisattva. As soon as his voice fell, the ice immediately formed a huge bodhisattva. A huge ice bodhisattva appeared in front of them. The butterfly ninja was a little worried in his heart, but the corner of his mouth outlined a confident smile. "I will win this time." And just at this moment, Ishizuka took a deep breath. The moment he clenched his swords, his body burst out. With a bang, he arrived in front of the huge ice bodhisattva statue that had just formed. Day Tiger. Just as his voice fell, at this moment, a powerful energy gushed out from his body, causing the surroundings to shake. A huge tiger directly tore all the ice, tore the cold wind, and tore Tong Mo, who was trying to escape to recover. Tong Mo's body was cut in half, and he was also sent flying more than 10 meters away. Only then did he slowly stabilize and land on the road. At the same time, there was a long gully on the road. Ishizuka completely broke all the power in one move, but he was also exhausted at this time. He directly breathed a sigh of relief, gritted his teeth, and dropped his swords on the ground. His whole body half knelt down. At the same time, the transparent blood vessels returned to their original state. His fluttering long hair also directly drooped down. At this moment, the butterfly ninja rushed forward and quickly supported Ishizuka, who was about to fall down. Ishizuka must be exhausted. After using so much power, his face was full of fatigue, and he said with a wry smile, "Finally defeated him." The butterfly ninja seemed to think of something, and there was a bit of doubt in his eyes as he said, "You and him, Ishinasuke faintly said, "He is my enemy who killed my mother. I lived with him for a period of time, but then he killed my mother. My mother threw me into the river to drift, and finally let me live." From the first time he saw this enemy in front of him, and that cold and elegant style, this seemingly wild child, but in fact, this meticulous young man remembered his own life experience. So he wanted to end the enemy in front of him with one strike. At this moment, Tong Mo still stood up. His body was originally cut into two halves, but the two halves fused together and became a complete body. When he stood up, he laughed wildly and said with a face full of smiles, "Do you think you've won? You just made me spend a lot of power. I have obtained powerful energy. No one can defeat me, do you think?" His body spewed out an amazing amount of dark energy, but at this time, Ishinasuke felt very troublesome and wanted to stand up and fight. The butterfly ninja faintly said, "If you think you can still fight, if you think you can still survive, then give it a try." Tong Mo couldn't help but swallow a mouthful of nervous foam in horror. His fused body began to dissipate. He only felt that he was melting like a candle, and he suddenly felt pain. He was very surprised and said, "Why is this happening?" The butterfly ninja said indifferently, "Why is it like this?" "Because your body has already been pierced by me hundreds of times, but in that instant, I injected 7,000 times the wisteria poison. Moreover, it's profitable. When your strength is almost exhausted, it will directly dissolve your body." Tong Mo's face changed, but he had no face, and in an instant, his body melted, and at the same time, his soul scattered with the wind to hell. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.